In a world that often measures success by its fleeting achievements, by wealth, status, or fleeting moments of happiness, it is all too easy to forget the deeper truth. True greatness is not found in what we achieve, but in what we have become. There is a force, a presence, that has never ceased, that has always been in the business of building something far greater than the world can fathom. That force, my friends, is Jesus. We live in a world constantly shifting, where standards change, trends evolve, and what is considered valuable today may no longer hold that position tomorrow. Amid this perpetual motion, it is easy to forget that there are forces at work, unseen yet unchanging, that transcend all of this. One of these unshakable forces is the work of Jesus, who has always been, and remains, in the business of building men. His mission was never confined to a single moment in history, but is ongoing, timeless in nature, and rooted in a purpose far greater than we can comprehend. We may often think of Jesus as a figure from the past, an icon of religious history who lived and died over 2,000 years ago. It is easy to look at his life through the lens of history and think that his work is finished, relegated to a distant period. But to do so is to misunderstand the essence of his mission. Jesus is not a man confined to the pages of a book. He is a living, active presence still at work in the law who call on his name. He is still, to this day, in the business of building men. At the core of this building process is the nature of the transformation that Jesus brings. When we speak of building men, we are not referring to external accomplishments or physical feats, but to the deep inward work of the heart and soul. Jesus is not concerned with how much we accumulate or how high we rise in the eyes of the world. His focus is on who we are becoming, not on what we are doing. This is crucial, for it is easy to mistake success in the world's eyes for success in the eyes of God. The two are not the same. The transformation that Jesus brings is not a superficial change. It is not simply a matter of modifying behavior or conforming to a set of rules. It is an inward revolution, a reordering of our priorities, desires, and affections. It is the kind of change that touches the deepest parts of our hearts, the places where our true selves reside. What Jesus does is not to impose a new set of external standards, but to reorient the very essence of who we are. In this sense, his work is not just about teaching us how to live, but about remaking us entirely. This process is not one that we can accomplish on our own, no matter how hard we try or how determined we may be. True transformation comes only through his grace, his power, and his guidance. The reason for this transformation is not merely for us to be better people in a moral sense, but for us to become the people we were always meant to be. There is a unique purpose and identity designed for each of us, a calling that transcends the fleeting ambitions and distractions of this world. Jesus came to reveal that purpose and to empower us to live in alignment with it. He calls us not just to be good, but to be holy, not just to be strong, but to be humble, not just to succeed by worldly standards, but to succeed by worldly standards, but to succeed by divine standards. The work he is doing in us is not a temporary fix. It is the foundation for the life we are meant to live, a life of eternal significance. Yet this transformation is not always easy or comfortable. The process of being built by Jesus often involves hardship, struggle, and discomfort. In fact, it is through difficulty that much of this transformation occurs. The process of being shaped, molded, and remade is one that often requires us to face our weaknesses, our flaws, and our sins. This is not a process that happens in isolation, but through the experiences, relationships, and trials of life. Jesus does not take us out of the world to change us, but he uses the very fabric of life itself, the relationships, the challenges, the joys and sorrows as instruments of his work. In this way, the building process is one of constant renewal. It is not a one-time event, but an ongoing work that continues throughout our lives. There are moments when the work of building seems to pause, when we feel as though we are standing still, but in reality, even in these times, Jesus is still at work. His building is not always immediately visible. It is often subtle, hidden beneath the surface of our everyday lives. But that does not mean it is not happening. Just as a tree's roots grow deep in the soil, out of sight, before the trunk and branches rise above the earth, so too does the work of transformation happen in hidden, internal ways before it becomes apparent externally. What we see in others, and what we experience ourselves in our walk with Jesus, is not a mere reflection of our own abilities or efforts, but a testimony to his grace and work. It is through his hands that we are shaped, through his guidance that we grow, and through his love that we are built. This is not a process of self-improvement, but a process of surrender and cooperation with the one who knows us better than we know ourselves. We often fight against this process, trying to build ourselves according to our own desires and preferences, but true growth comes when we stop trying to impose our will on the world, and instead allow Jesus to shape us according to his perfect plan. The beauty of this work is that it is not something we have to do alone. We are not left to build ourselves, struggling in isolation, but are invited to participate in a partnership with the Creator of the universe. This partnership is not one of equal strength. He is the builder, and we are the ones being built, but it is a relationship of trust, faith, and love. He calls us to trust him with the building process, to place our lives in his hands, and to allow him to take the raw material of our hearts and mold it into something beautiful. The business of building men, then, is not merely about personal transformation. It is about restoring us to our original design, to the person we were always meant to be. It is a work of redemption, of making whole that which was broken, of bringing light to the darkness. In the world's eyes, we may be viewed as unfinished, flawed, and imperfect, but in Jesus' eyes, we are works in progress, and he is committed to completing the work he has begun. His business is not to abandon us when the going gets tough, but to remain with us, walking with us every step of the way, until the work is finished and we are fully conformed to his image. This is why Jesus is still in the business of building men today. His mission did not end on the cross, or with his resurrection. Those were the moments that made the ongoing work possible. Through his sacrifice, he made it possible for us to be reconciled to God and to experience the transformative power of the Holy Spirit in our lives. The building process continues because he lives, and because he lives, he is still at work, shaping and molding men into the image of his Son. He is still calling us to a higher purpose, to become the men we were always meant to be, to live lives of eternal significance. And he will continue this work until it is finished, until we stand before him, fully transformed, the men he has built us to be. The transformation of the heart is a work that goes far beyond the external circumstances of life. It is not about appearances, accomplishments, or outward success. It is about a deep, profound change that takes place within. At the core of Jesus' mission is the act of transforming the heart of man, remaking it, reshaping it, and refining it to reflect something truer, purer, and more aligned with God's design. This transformation is not a superficial modification, but a radical overhaul of who we are at the very core of our being. Our hearts, in their natural state, are often ruled by selfishness, pride, and desires that are misaligned with the true purpose of our existence. We seek fulfillment in things that ultimately cannot satisfy. We chase after success, comfort, and approval, all the while missing the deeper calling that lies within us. This is where Jesus enters. His purpose is not just to reform behavior, but to change the heart, to move it from a place of self-centeredness to a place of selflessness, from a place of disorder to a place of peace, from a place of weakness to a place of weakness to strength. The heart, in its biblical understanding, is not just the seat of emotions, but the center of the will, desires, and thoughts. It governs how we live and how we interact with the world around us. When Jesus speaks of transforming the heart, he is speaking of an entire reorientation of the person. He calls us to surrender our hearts to him so that he can cleanse, purify, and redirect them according to his purposes. It is a process that requires openness, willingness, and trust. It is not something that can be achieved through our own efforts alone. When the heart is transformed by Jesus, it is not just about becoming a better person, but about becoming the person we were always intended to be. The desires that once led us astray begin to shift. Our affections, once set on fleeting pleasures, are redirected towards things of eternal value. We no longer seek validation from the world, but from God. The things that once seemed so important, success, wealth, popularity, lose their grip on our hearts as we begin to see them for what they are, temporary and ultimately unfulfilling. Our hearts, when transformed, become more aligned with the heart of Jesus himself. This change is not an instant one, and it often comes through a process of struggle, growth, and refinement. Just as a diamond is formed under pressure, so too is the heart shaped by trials, challenges, and moments of discomfort. The transformation of the heart does not mean we will no longer face difficulties or weaknesses. On the contrary, the journey can often be painful as we confront the aspects of ourselves that need to be reshaped. But in the hands of Jesus, this process is not one of destruction, but of creation. He does not destroy us. He remakes us into something far more beautiful and capable than we could ever become on our own. In this process, the heart is gradually made more resilient, more compassionate, and more reflective of the love of Christ. We learn to love not only those who love us, but even those who oppose us. We learn to forgive those who wrong us, not because it is easy, but because we have experienced the overwhelming forgiveness of Christ. Our hearts begin to reflect the very nature of God's love, unconditional, sacrificial, and abundant. And as our hearts are transformed, so too are our actions. Our lives begin to bear fruit that reflects the change that has taken place deep within. It is a fruit that the world cannot manufacture, a fruit that comes only through the work of Jesus. This transformation is not just for a select few, but for all who are willing to open their hearts to Him. It is a process available to everyone, no matter their past, their struggles, or their flaws. Jesus does not require perfection to begin this work. He requires only willingness, faith, and a heart open to His transforming power. And as He works within us, we discover a deeper sense of purpose, peace, and fulfillment than we could have ever imagined. There is something deeply ingrained in the human soul, a longing for purpose, a desire to live for something greater than the ordinary. It is this yearning that often drives us to seek meaning in our lives, to pursue ambitions, to chase after goals that promise fulfillment. Yet, for all of our striving, many find that their pursuits ultimately fall short, leaving them feeling unsatisfied, unfulfilled, and empty. The world offers us countless ways to find purpose through career success, wealth, recognition, relationships, or personal achievements. But these often leave us wondering if this is truly what we were created for. It is in this very moment of questioning, when the noise of the world grows louder, that Jesus steps in, offering us a purpose far beyond anything the world can offer. When Jesus calls us, He does not call us to live lives of mediocrity or mere existence. He calls us to something far higher, a purpose that transcends the mundane. His call is not one to passively accept the conditions of life and live according to the world's standards, but one to actively engage in a mission far greater than ourselves. This is not simply a call to pursue personal dreams, nor is it a call to follow the expectations of society. It is a call to a divine purpose, a purpose that connects us to the eternal, a purpose that shapes every part of who we are and how we live. For many, this purpose is initially difficult to grasp. It does not come in the form of clear, immediate answers or tangible goals. In fact, it is often something that is slowly revealed over time as we walk with Jesus and learn to listen to His voice. It is a purpose that transcends our limited understanding, inviting us to step out of the comfort zone of self-interest and into the expansive realm of God's will. This purpose is not necessarily about achieving fame or fortune, rather. It is about aligning our lives with the eternal story that God is telling in the world. It is a call to join in His work, to be part of a greater narrative that is unfolding before us. The purpose Jesus offers is rooted in the idea that life is not just about our own individual desires and pursuits. We are not the center of the universe, and our lives are not meant to be lived in isolation or solely for our own benefit. Jesus calls us to a purpose that is greater than ourselves, one that is deeply connected to others, to creation, and to the kingdom of God. This purpose is one that invites us to serve, to love, to give, and to sacrifice for the good of others. It is not about accumulating wealth or recognition, but about pouring out our lives in service to something greater than our own personal ambitions. Living with purpose, according to Jesus' call, means that we begin to see the world through a different lens. We no longer view life through the eyes of self-interest, but with a broader, more compassionate perspective. Our purpose becomes centered around the needs of others, around the advancement of God's kingdom, and around the truth that we are part of something far bigger than ourselves. This shift in perspective changes the way we view our work, our relationships, and our actions. We no longer see our careers simply as a way to climb the ladder of success, but as an opportunity to serve others and to use our gifts and talents for the greater good. Our relationships are no longer about what we can get out of them, but about how we can love and care for others. Our time, our resources, and our energy are no longer spent pursuing fleeting pleasures, but directed toward the eternal purpose that God has placed before us. One of the most profound aspects of this purpose is that it brings deep fulfillment. The world tells us that fulfillment comes from personal achievement, from getting ahead, from gaining recognition and success. But Jesus shows us a different way, a way that offers fulfillment not through what we gain, but through what we give. True purpose is found when we give ourselves over to something beyond our own desires, when we pour our lives out for others and for the work of the kingdom. This is a radical shift in how we think about our lives. It is not about making our own mark on the world, but about being part of God's larger story. It is about stepping into a role that is much larger than ourselves, one that contributes to something eternal and far-reaching. But finding this purpose is not always easy. It requires a willingness to look beyond our own narrow understanding of what is important and to see life from a much broader perspective. It means letting go of the things that we once thought would bring us happiness, our pursuit of wealth, our desire for recognition, our need for comfort, and instead, seeking the things that truly matter in the eyes of God. This is not a call to abandon all ambition or to neglect our responsibilities, but to realign our goals and desires with a higher purpose. When we do so, we find that our lives take on a new depth, a new meaning, and a new direction. We begin to see that true fulfillment comes not from self-centered pursuits, but from selfless service, from loving others, and from being part of God's redemptive work in the world. At times, the world's distractions may try to pull us away from this purpose. The pressures of society, the lure of fame, wealth, and success, and the desire for personal comfort can easily sidetrack us from the path that Jesus calls us to. But when we truly understand the depth of the purpose he offers, these distractions lose their power over us. We begin to see them for what they are, temporary and fleeting. The true purpose that Jesus offers is eternal, and it is this eternal purpose that gives us the strength to endure the challenges of life. It is what enables us to stay focused even in the face of trials, setbacks, and hardships. When we begin to live according to this higher purpose, our lives are no longer defined by the ups and downs of success and failure, but by the steady commitment to live out the calling we have received from God. This commitment may not always lead to the recognition or success that the world values, but it will lead to something far greater, a life of fulfillment, joy, and eternal significance. When we align ourselves with the purpose that Jesus has set before us, we discover that it is not about what we achieve in this life, but about what we contribute to the greater good and to God's eternal kingdom. This purpose becomes the foundation upon which we build our lives, giving us a sense of direction, peace, and ultimate fulfillment. In this way, Jesus does not simply call us to live a life of comfort or ease. He calls us to a life of purpose that transcends the ordinary, that connects us to a greater story, and that offers us fulfillment in ways the world could never offer. When we follow this calling, we step into the grand narrative of God's kingdom and begin to live in a way that reflects his love, his mission, and his eternal plan for the world. The purpose Jesus gives us is not just a dream or a hope. It is a calling to step into a life that is meaningful, impactful, and aligned with God's greater purpose. One of the most powerful aspects of Jesus' work in building men is the way he transforms our relationships. At the heart of his ministry was the message of love, love for God, love for others, and love for ourselves in a way that reflects our identity as children of God. This love does not just remain an abstract concept. It is meant to be lived out, influencing how we interact with those around us. When Jesus works in our lives, he reshapes not only how we view ourselves, but also how we engage with the people in our lives. Jesus calls us to love others not only when it is easy, but also when it is difficult. He challenges us to love, even our enemies, to forgive those who wrong us, and to extend grace where it may not seem deserved. This kind of love is not natural for us, and it often goes against our instincts. Our natural tendencies are to protect ourselves, to seek revenge when wronged, and to hold grudges. But when Jesus builds us, he invites us to experience a love that is radical, unconditional, and transformative. It is a love that mirrors his own self-sacrificial, generous, and always seeking the good of others. As Jesus works in us, he teaches us how to build healthy relationships, grounded in trust, respect, and mutual care. His love becomes the foundation upon which our interactions with others are built. We begin to see the value in every person, understanding that each one is created in the image of God and worthy of respect and kindness. The way we view people changes. Where we once saw them as competitors or obstacles, we now see them as individuals with their own struggles, needs, and potential. This shift in perspective enables us to build deeper, more meaningful connections based not on what we can get from others, but on what we can give. Forgiveness becomes a key part of the relational transformation that Jesus brings. In our human nature, we often hold on to offenses, allowing them to fester and damage our hearts. But when Jesus builds us, He shows us the healing power of forgiveness, both for the one who has wronged us and for ourselves. He teaches us that forgiveness is not about condoning the wrong, but about releasing the power it has over us. It is about choosing peace and freedom over bitterness and anger. The building process also extends to how we engage in community. Jesus does not call us to live isolated lives, but to live in fellowship with one another. His vision for our lives includes connection, support, and accountability within the body of believers. In a world that often promotes individualism and self-reliance, Jesus invites us into a family where we can encourage one another, bear each other's burdens, and grow together. This is a community where love is not just an idea, but a lived reality where each member is concerned for the welfare of others and is committed to helping one another grow in faith and character. As we allow Jesus to build us, our relationships become a reflection of his love and grace. We become more patient, more understanding, and more compassionate. We learn to listen more deeply, to speak with kindness, and to act with integrity. Our relationships with others are no longer driven by selfish desires or a need to control, but by a desire to serve, uplift, and encourage. The work of Jesus in building us is evident in the way we love those around us, and this love becomes a powerful testimony of the change he has brought into our lives.